All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep on business continuity and disaster recovery.
Yeah.
Like what keeps businesses going when something crazy happens? We've got all these questions and answers, so let's get into it.
Yeah, love it. Always interesting to see how people get ready for, well, anything, really.
I know, right? Like,
Yeah.
where do we even begin with all this?
Yeah.
Oh, here's something. So our material asks, the ultimate obstacles to business continuity are threats that may include which of the following? A, natural disasters.
Yeah.
B, missed targets. C, loss of profit. D, all of the above. What do you think?
Well, I mean, all that stuff could definitely mess things up, right? But
Yeah.
the best answer is D, all of the above. It's not just about, like, the big disasters,
So not just earthquakes and fires.
Exactly. It's also cyber attacks, data breaches, even human error, all that can really hurt a business.
Wow, you're right. It's like you need a safety net for, like, everything.
Much.
Okay, so this next one is interesting. It asks, when planning team assignments, it is most important to remember which of the following. A, nobody should hold more than one team assignment. B, the number of people or number of teams is not as important as making sure all the duties are performed. C, a single key person can be assigned to all teams for consistency. D, the number of duties is the same for each team. So, like, how do you build the right team for this?
That's a great question. It really highlights how important teamwork is for this. The most important thing is making sure everything that needs to get done, it gets done.
Yeah.
So the answer is B. It's not about the size of the team or anything like that.
So it's more about having a good plan and making sure everything gets covered, not about who does what.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. It's like there's no I in team.
Yeah.
Okay, this next one I've always wondered about. What is the biggest difference between disaster planning and business continuity planning?
Yeah. People mix those up all the time.
So what's the difference?
Well, disaster planning is like reacting to something bad that happened, like a fire or something. Business continuity planning is bigger. It's about making sure the entire organization can keep working no matter what happens.
Oh, okay. So disaster planning is like having a fire extinguisher, and business continuity planning is like the whole fire safety system.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Nice. All right, next up, recovery sites. It asks, what is the principal reason you might use a hot site? I've always wanted to know about those.
A hot site is basically like a complete copy of your main site. It's ready to go immediately. Like if something happens to your office, you just go to the hot site and everything is up and running.
Oh, wow. So it's like an exact replica, so you don't skip a beat.
Yeah, exactly. Minimizes downtime, which is super important for some businesses, but it can be expensive.
Yeah. There's always a trade-off, right? So what about warm sites and cold sites?
Right. So a warm site is kind of in between. It's got some stuff ready, but you'd still need to move some equipment and data over.
And a cold site is like starting from scratch.
Pretty much. You'd need to bring everything.
So it really depends on what the business needs and how much downtime they can handle.
Yeah, and how much they can afford.
Right, of course. Okay, well, this is getting really interesting.
It is.
And we've got a whole stack of questions to go. What's next?
Well, let's see. This next one's all about metrics, which is always fun, right? So it asks, what does RTO stand for?
Ooh, metrics. I love this stuff. So what is it?
RTO stands for Recovery Time Objective. It's how long it should take to get a system back up and running after a disruption.
Okay, so a hot site would have a way shorter RTO than a cold site, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that ties into another question here. It asks, what is the most important factor in deciding what RTO you need?
So it's not just about how fast you can recover. It's about how fast you need to recover.
Yeah, exactly. You have to balance speed with cost.
This is fascinating. It's all connected, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It all comes together.
Well, this is awesome. What else do we have here?
All right, so the next question here, it's about the Business Impact Analysis, or BIA. It asks, in business continuity, why is it important to replicate every process?
Oh, okay, the BIA. I'm guessing it's not as simple as just because. Yeah.
You got it. It's actually not important to replicate every single process. The BIA is about figuring out which ones are really critical, the ones you absolutely can't live without.
Right, like the heart and lungs of the business.
Exactly, the ones that would really hurt if they went down. There's another question here that kind of relates to that. It asks, name one of the purposes of creating a business continuity plan.
Well, I'd say avoiding total chaos when something bad happens is pretty important.
There you go. One of the big goals is to make things less crazy during a crisis, to have a plan so you're not just like running around like a chicken with its head cut off. And the BIA helps with that by telling you what to prioritize, what to focus on first.
So you're not scrambling in the dark. You've got a flashlight.
Exactly. You've already done the thinking ahead of time. Okay, here's a good one. It asks, when can continuity planners create BC plans without the business impact analysis BIA process?
Ooh, that's interesting. Can you ever skip the BIA?
Nope, not a chance. The answer here is pretty clear. It says it's not possible. Critical processes constantly change. Things are always changing in business, so you got to keep your BIA up to date, too.
Oh, right. So it's not just a one-time thing. You got to keep revisiting it.
Exactly. It's like a living document, always evolving. Which actually leads perfectly into this next question. It asks, what should signal that the business continuity plan needs to be updated?
Let me think. I'm going to guess it's not when the coffee machine breaks. What are some real signs that it's time for an update?
Yeah, good guess. This one gives a few options, and the best answer is all of the above. So, like, after a certain amount of time, for sure. But also, if the market changes, if you have new people on the team, especially if the business goals change, like, if you're doing something totally different than you were before.
Right, so you got to stay flexible and adjust to whatever's happening. Makes sense.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads into communication, which is super important. There's a question here. It asks, what does the acronym EOC represent?
Ooh, acronyms.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Efficient Operational Center.
Close, but not quite. It stands for Emergency Operations Center. It's basically the command center where everyone meets up during a crisis, to coordinate and communicate.
Oh, right, like the war room.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Okay, so this next one is about the media, which can be, well, a whole other beast during a crisis. It asks, news media attention should be...
Ooh, yeah, the media. Given how fast misinformation can spread these days, I'd say carefully managed is a good start.
You got it. The answer here really stresses having one person, a spokesperson, to handle all the media stuff. That way everyone's getting the same information, no mixed messages.
Right, so one clear voice, that makes a lot of sense. Control the narrative.
Exactly. It's all about maintaining trust, especially during a crisis. Okay, so this next one's about vital records and media. It asks, what are the best examples of vital records and media? These are like the really important documents, the stuff you really don't want to lose.
Yeah, like the crown jewels of the business.
Yeah, exactly. Things like customer lists, financial records, contracts, backup tapes, all that stuff. Without that, you're in big trouble.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You need those to recover. And it emphasizes that they need to be protected and backed up regularly. Can't just stick them in a drawer and forget about them.
Definitely not. Okay, what about testing these plans? This next one asks about different testing methods. I guess practice makes perfect, right?
For sure. You got to make sure the plan actually works when you need it. This one talks about three main methods: desktop, modular, and full interruption.
Okay, break those down for me. Like, what's the difference?
All right, so a desktop test is basically like a walkthrough. You go through the plan with your team, but you're not actually doing anything.
Right, so it's like a theoretical run-through.
Exactly. Then there's the modular test where you test specific parts of the plan, like, activating the backups or moving to a different site.
So you're actually doing stuff, not just talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the full interruption test, where you basically simulate a real disaster. That's the most realistic, but also the most disruptive and expensive.
So like the ultimate test, but maybe not something you can do all the time.
Right. It depends on the business and how much risk they're willing to take.
This is all so interesting. I'm learning so much.
Me too.
Okay, what else is in this giant stack of questions?
Let me see. Oh, here's one about a data-related metric. It asks, what does RPO stand for?
Oh, another acronym. I love these. Let's hear it.
RPO stands for Recovery Point Objective. It's basically like how much data you can afford to lose. Like if something happens, how far back do you need to go to get your data back?
Oh, okay. So like if you can only afford to lose an hour's worth of data, you need a much better backup system than if you can lose a whole day's worth.
Exactly. It all depends on the business and what they can handle.
So RTO is how fast you can recover, and RPO is how much you can afford to lose. Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They both really matter when you're planning for this stuff.
Yeah, this deep dive has been so insightful. We've covered so much, from threats to recovery plans. It's amazing how much goes into keeping a business running smoothly. But before we wrap up, I think there's one more question we should tackle.
Okay, so we've gone through a ton of these questions about business continuity and disaster recovery. But there's this one that I think is a really good way to kind of like sum everything up. It asks, what is a critical business function?
That's a great one. It really gets to the core of it all. Basically, a critical business function is like anything that's absolutely essential for the business to survive, to meet its obligations, to keep its reputation intact. Right? It's what the business does, the things that keep the lights on.
Yeah, exactly. And figuring out what those are is like the first step in building a good business continuity plan. You got to know what to protect before you can protect it, right?
For sure. And that's where the business impact analysis comes in, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it before, but can you remind everyone, why is it so important?
Yeah. So the BIA, it helps you pinpoint those critical functions and then figure out how bad it would be if they got disrupted. It's like a risk assessment,
So it's not just what could go wrong, but how bad it would be if it went wrong.
Exactly. That way you can prioritize, figure out where to put your resources,
Yeah.
helps you make smart decisions.
It's like a roadmap for dealing with the unexpected.
Yeah, I like that. Speaking of roadmaps, there's a question here that asks, what is a disaster recovery plan? Which I think is a good thing to kind of revisit now.
Yeah, totally. We've talked a lot about planning, but what exactly is a disaster recovery plan? What does it look like?
So a disaster recovery plan, it's basically a step-by-step guide for getting your IT systems back up and running after something bad happens. It's all documented, very structured, with clear procedures.
Oh, so it's like the playbook for your tech team, right?
Yeah, exactly. It
Hmm.
tells everyone who does what, when, and how, so the recovery goes as smoothly as possible.
And that's just one part of the bigger picture, right? The whole business continuity thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Disaster recovery is really focused on IT, but business continuity is way bigger. It's about everything: operations, communications, people, the whole 9 yards.
It's like the difference between fixing the engine of a car
Yeah.
and making sure the whole car is drivable after an accident.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. They're both important, but they address different parts of the problem.
Totally. Okay, so we've covered a lot today, but there's one last question I want to hit because I think it's really important. It asks, why do you need business continuity? It seems basic, but I think it's a really good way to wrap everything up.
It is a fundamental question, and the answer is, I think, pretty straightforward. Businesses need continuity to survive. Literally, to stay alive in a world that's constantly throwing curveballs.
To weather the storm and come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly. It's about protecting what you've built, your reputation, your customers, your future.
It's like baking resilience into the DNA of the business.
That's a great way to put it. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our deep dive into business continuity and disaster recovery. We've gone through so much, learned a ton, and I hope everyone listening feels a little more prepared to face whatever comes their way.
It's been great talking about all this with you, really insightful stuff.
Absolutely. And remember, folks, knowledge is power, and preparation is key. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and stay resilient.